Well, AEW Dynamite in Philadelphia was a pretty stacked card, but with an underwhelming result. Let's get into it. This is All Elite Review. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan. And welcome to this edition of All Elite Review. This should have went up on Friday, but I've been busy with some stuff. I actually had to work on Saturday at my regular job. And not only that, the friggin' power went out on Saturday. I was going to do the damn review then, but then the power went out, so that's always great. But I'm going to be reviewing the show from Philadelphia on that was on October the 16th, if memory serves me correctly. It was a pretty stacked card because you had two matches in the tag title tournament. You had both singles titles on the line, and you had a pretty big tag team match. And it kind of underwhelmed a little bit. A few of the matches had some botches, and the main event really pissed me off because of how it ended. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the show opens up with the second match of the first round of the tag title tournament, with SCU against the Best Friends, or at least they would have, but the Lucha Brothers attacked Kazarian and Daniels beforehand, and Daniels was hit with a package pile driver on the ramp, which takes him out of the equation, and Scorpio Sky basically had to fill in. This match was actually pretty good for the most part. So highlights of this match. The Best Friends start things out with a rocket launcher cutter for a 2 count. And then they hit a short pile driver knee strike combo for a 2 count, which looked really good. Trent with his German suplex, Chucky T with the double stomp, Trent with a spear. Kazarian tries to fight out of the corner, and then the Best Friends do a stacked superplex for a 2 count, which looked pretty cool. Kazarian gets the hot tag to Scorpio Sky, and Sky hits a drop kick. And bear in mind that Scorpio Sky is not in his ring gear, so that made it kind of interesting. It's a double stomp. Sky pulls Trent into Chuck Senton, and Kazarian does a slingshot Frankensteiner on the outside. Scorpio Sky hits a tope con hero, and then SCU does their assisted tornado DDT, which always looks really good. Sky hits a nice flying back elbow, and then Kazarian hits that nice slingshot leg drop for a 2 count. Always looks really good. The Best Friends hit their soul food half and half suplex combo, and then Best Friends hit the rising knee from Chuck Taylor, and then Trent hits the running Busako knee, and then they do a Doomsday knee strike for a 2 count. Kazarian does a back body drop on the apron on I think it was Chuck, and then SCU went for the combo finisher that Kazarian and Sky do, which is the powerbomb lung blower, but they horribly botched it. I don't know if Kazarian went a little bit early, but he hit the powerbomb, and Scorpio Sky wasn't ready for it. He was getting ready to hit the double knees, the lung blower part of the move, and went way too late, and it just ended up looking like a weak drop kick, as if they were coming down for the powerbomb, but they got the 3 count anyway. So that really kind of sucked. I mean, that really took the air out of the finish of this match. I mean, if they would have hit it like they did on on Marco's stunt the previous week, then I think it definitely would have gotten a better reaction, and the match would have ended a lot better than it did. It was still a good match overall. I still give it 3.25 stars out of 5, but this is just a sign of things to come for what should have been a stacked show. And then, in a little bit of a change-up, they decided to have Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz, take on John Silver and Alex Reynolds in a squash match. John Silver and Alex Reynolds are actually known on the indies as the Beaver Boys. This match lasted all of 2 minutes, and it was basically Santana and Ortiz just basically squashing these guys. Santana with an enziguri kick and a flying back elbow. Ortiz does a sit-out powerbomb, and then he does and then he flips his opponent up, and Santana hits it like a running kick. Santana with a running baseball slide drop kick, and Santana and Ortiz hit their street sweeper, which is the sit-out powerbomb blockbuster combo for the 3 count and the victory. Like I said, it lasted only like 2 minutes. It was a squash match. I gave it 1.5 stars out of 5. I mean, it was a squash match. What else do you want me to say? And then Jericho came on the Titantron and was basically putting Santana and Ortiz over, although they were shouting, random shit, while Jericho was trying to talk, so that was kind of annoying. And then they showed a video package about Cody and his quest for the title, which was actually pretty cool. Then we get to the AEW Women's World Title match with Britt Baker and Rijo. And if you saw the rankings that I showed last week after Rijo and Baker won their tag team match last week, you would have seen that Britt Baker was pretty much far and away the number 1 contender. There were a lot of people who were like, well, why wasn't there a number 1 contenders match? Because Britt Baker was, according to my rankings, was so far ahead of the rest of the women, it was pretty obvious who the number 1 contender was. Not to mention that her overall record at that time was 3-1. You know what I mean? So to me, it was pretty obvious who the number 1 contender was. Not to mention that you have Britt Baker in basically her home state. Of course, this coming Wednesday, they're going to her hometown of Pittsburgh, which this week I guess it's going to be called Britsburg for her, and she's going to be in action. The Young Bucks are going to be in action, so Pittsburgh will probably be a pretty good show, I'd say. And I'm not saying that this was a bad show or anything, far from it. I mean, when you look at what this show had, and then you look at what WWE's put on, I honestly think that this episode was better than pretty much everything that the WWE has put on this year, except perhaps WrestleMania. Think about that for a second. I'm just saying that by the standards that I put AEW under, with the amount of good wrestling that they put on, this was a little underwhelming. This was probably the weakest episode out of all 3 so far. But, I mean, it was still a good show regardless. It just wasn't up to standard. But anywho, so you have Britt Baker against Rijo in her first title match. The interesting thing about Rijo is she has been on every single AEW show so far. There have been 7 in total, 4 pay-per-view events, and 3 episodes of Dynamite. She has been in a match on every single show. I'm not talking, like I said, I wasn't talking about her just making an appearance. No, she has been in a match on every single show, whether it be tag, triple threat, championship match, you name it. But it's pretty obvious why they are pushing her big time, because listen to the crowd. I mean, when she came out for her championship match, I mean, she got a huge reaction from the crowd, and you could see it in the ring when they were getting ready to ring the bell. I mean, when she was getting cheered and she could hear it, she was pretty freaking excited, and you could see it in her body reaction, in her body movements and stuff like that. So, highlights of this match. It started out a little bit sloppy, some of the mat wrestling was a little and honestly, one of the observations that I made is that Britt Baker just doesn't seem to... She seems to be a little bit inconsistent in her performances. Because when I saw her compete at Double or Nothing, Fight for the Fallen, and All Out, she did pretty well, although she had a couple of the schmazzles at Fight for the Fallen. Of course, that was due to the concussion. But, then, at Battle Royal and All Out, she had put on one hell of a performance. She did a freaking Canadian Destroyer to beat Priestley. But it seems like the last couple of outings, she's just been off her game. And this was another case. But they did clean it up near the end of the match, though. And Baker immediately tries to go for her submission maneuver, which now has a name. It's called the Lockjaw. Makes sense. Both girls start trading forearm shots. Baker goes for the 2 count, or tries to go for the pin. Rijo bridges out of it as usual, and it always looks really cool, and hits a running drop kick. Rijo hits her patented victory roll stomp maneuver, and then she hits a flying knee strike and a suplex. Baker dodges her coup de grace double stomp and hits the sling blade. Looked a little loose. And then Baker hits a TKO, and it wasn't like the cutter version, it was actually the stunner version. And then she hits a drop kick for a 2 count. Rijo hits Britt Baker with several pin attempts, including the leg trap pin, which she got Nyla Rose with back at Fyter Fest. Rijo does some of that, and then she tries to go for the small package, but Baker blocks and hits Rijo with the fisherman neck breaker, and then a super kick for a close 2 count. It was a very close 2 count, like that close. I was like, holy shit, they nearly counted Rijo out right there. And then Baker tries to go for the ripcord elbow, but was it the ripcord elbow? No. Baker was actually going for the page turner, and Rijo gets out of it and hits a Northern Light suplex for a 2 count. Immediately goes into a single leg crab, and Baker was able to get to the ropes, but immediately after she got to the ropes, Rijo was through the ropes and was already up on the top turnbuckle, and I'm just like, holy shit, she got up that freaking turnbuckle fast, like a freaking spider monkey. And she hits the stiff coup de grace to the back of Baker for a 2 count. And then she hits a double knee strike to the back for a 2 count. It wasn't to the face. That's usually her finishers, the double knee strike to the face. But she only gets a 2 count out of it. Baker hits the ripcord elbow and then the page turner. And then immediately and then after the page turner goes for the lockjaw. There were a couple things I noticed about this, though, and I think it's probably something that they're going to play into, like the storytelling aspect of it. With the previous applications of the lockjaw, she would lock in like the Rings of Saturn. That was similar to like Pac's Brutalizer, where he would lock in the Rings of Saturn, trap both arms, and then lock in, like a neck lock. And that's what Baker was doing, and then she would put in the mandible claw portion of the hold. But in this case, it ends up turning into like a crippler crossface variation, which would actually ultimately cost her the match, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But Rijo was not, she was trying not to open her mouth because of the mandible claw portion, and Baker tries to lock it in, nearly locks it in, but because of the fact that she did not secure Rijo's right arm, it allowed Rijo to kind of swing around like that, and it carried her momentum to where, and because her left arm was already hooked around one of Baker's legs, it basically allowed her to roll her up into a pin. And from Baker's perspective, it all happened so fast that she didn't have a chance to kick out of it. And Rijo gets the 3 count and the victory and retains the women's championship. The match definitely started out sloppy, like I said. Baker is still a little green. She's only been in the ring for like 3 or 4 years, whereas Rijo has been in the ring for 13, and that's another thing that kind of played into the story, is that the announcers were like, yeah, that's 13 years of experience that paid off right there. it's hard to believe that Rijo is younger than Britt Baker, yet she's the experienced veteran. That is just so weird to me. But this match gets 3 stars out of 5. Again, it was a great finish to the match. And I don't think there's any question that Baker's going to get another shot at it. I mean, she's still in the rankings, the number 1 ranked wrestler behind Rijo. But now pretty much everybody else has a shot at it. And a lot of people are thinking, well, who will be Rijo's next contender if it's not Britt Baker? Well, one of the suggestions that I would have is put like maybe six of the ladies that are high in the rankings, maybe put them into like because there's still 3 more shows to go before we get to Full Gear. So what I would do is kind of do a series of matches on both Dynamite and AEW Dark, where you have like 6 of the wrestlers. They face each other in a series of 2 matches. You know, basically I would randomize like the matchups and stuff like that. And then whoever's still undefeated after the first 2 weeks, they basically all face each other in a multi-person match. And on the 3rd episode of Dynamite, and the episode right before Full Gear. And the winner of that match becomes the number 1 contender for Rijo at Full Gear. Because I'm pretty sure in saying that all 3 of the championships are going to be defended at Full Gear. So there's that. And not only that, but I think at this point, I think they can dial Rijo back a little bit, because she has been featured on every show. She's been well established. She is 6-1 right now. That's her overall record. And of course, she is super popular with the crowd, so that's why they've been pushing her to the moon right now. But I think you can afford to kind of dial it back a little bit, because what's happening right now is that right up to this match, it was basically just Rijo and Britt Baker. It's time to kind of develop the rest of the division, as it were. Because now with Baker's loss, it's wide open. So now you have an opportunity to kind of, develop the rest of the division. So at least that's how I would look at it. So, now you have a chance to kind of have a series of matches over the course of the next 2 shows. And then for the 3rd show, you can have like a multi-woman match to determine who the number 1 contender is based on the results from the previous 2 shows. And then the winner of that match faces Rijo at Full Gear for the title. That's how I would look at it. And it would probably be someone other than maybe Britt Baker or Brie Priestley, because I have a feeling they're going to want to have that match at Full Gear to kind of blow that rivalry off. And it's like, would they want to do that at Full Gear? Well, this rivalry has been going on since Fight for the Fallen. That was back in, July? So it's been going for a couple months now, for almost 3 months, and by the time we get to Full Gear, it'll be about 4 months. So it's been quite a long rivalry between these 2. So I'd imagine they're going to have the blow-off match at Full Gear. And then eventually in the future, what I would also do, I would have Bea Priestley kind of become a challenger to Rijo, because that then would have like a familiarity aspect to it, because both of them wrestle for World of Wonder Stardom in Japan, where Bea Priestley is the World of Stardom champion and Rijo is the High Speed champion. So if you have a match between Bea Priestley and Rijo, like say the next big pay-per-view event after Full Gear, you could have a situation, if both of them still have their Stardom championships by then, you could have a situation where, you could have Bea Priestley challenge Rijo not only for the AEW Women's World title, but you could also say, well, Bea Priestley would also like to challenge Rijo for the High Speed title. And in return, Bea Priestley will put her World of Stardom championship on the line, because that belt is actually the number 1 belt in Stardom right now. Basically, it's the organization's world title in that sense. So you would have 3, basically it would be a winner-take-all scenario if that were the case, where 3 championship belts are on the line, including basically 2 world titles, for 2 different organizations, including AEW, which is a huge deal anyways, And it creates this winner-take-all scenario. And, I mean, with that kind of stakes, and, you know, Bea Priestley, she is a pretty damn good wrestler. I mean, you know, she's an English wrestler. You know, she's from England, and she wrestles in Japan. Oh, by the way, her boyfriend is Will Ospreay. Yeah. The aerial assassin, who is widely considered to be one of the best wrestlers in the world. So there's that aspect to it too. But I mean, I've seen Bea Priestley wrestle. She can wrestle, you know. So having her, and of course the familiarity aspect with her and Rijo being from Stardom as well, and still wrestling for Stardom, I think that would really create that dynamic between those two, and you could have like a winner-take-all scenario at a future pay-per-view event. But that's just me. But anywho, let's move on. And, boy, it's one of the most disappointing things that kind of happened for this show. Because the next match was the other tag team match in the tag team title tournament for the first round. Jurassic Express against the Lucha Brothers. Damn it. This was originally supposed to be Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. Boy and his dinosaur to go up against the Lucha Brothers. You know, two of the most popular tag teams in the company right now. So this match should have been absolute fire. If it wasn't for the fact that Luchasaurus got injured. It was apparently a thigh injury. From what I heard, it was I think they said it was a torn quad or something like that. I'm not sure. But if that's the case, then reports are that he's going to be out for about 6 to 8 weeks. And I had, and if that was, I have a feeling that if Luchasaurus' injury didn't happen, then I think they would have gone with Jurassic Express to run the table and win the world titles. But unfortunately, as it stands, you know, Luchasaurus had to bow out, so Marco Stunt basically had to sub in. And at that point, it's kind of like, well, I mean, with Luchasaurus, then you could have, you know, conceivably, you know, put Jurassic Express over to Lucha Brothers, but with Marco Stunt, it's not conceivable. So they basically had to change things up on the fly. And based on the attack on SCU at the beginning of the show, I would imagine that the final will probably be SCU versus the Lucha Brothers for the World Tag Team titles. Which, if that's the case, then that would be fine. But I'm pretty sure they would have rather had Jurassic Express versus Dark Order and have Jurassic Express go over to like a huge fucking roar from the crowd. But unfortunately, that's just not going to happen now. But they certainly tried to make a good match out of it, and it was actually pretty good. For what it was worth. Highlights of the match: Stunt hit a Frankensteiner and an assisted DDT. Jungle Boy hits a rolling DDT where he kind of rolls up to his opponent, jumps on him, and then hits the DDT. Stunt hits a tope suicida. Jungle Boy with an Acai moonsault, and then Jungle Boy and Stunt kind of did their pump handle 450 leg drop combo, which always looks really good for a 2 count. And then Jurassic Express hits a 619 German suplex combo for a 2 count. And then Pentagon gets some offense in by hitting a super kick to both opponents. Jungle Boy comes back with a scissors kick. And then Rey Fenix hits an Enziguri arm drag combo, which looked pretty cool. And then he did a corkscrew press to the outside, which Rey Fenix is just insane. Pentagon with a pump handle driver on Marco Stunt for a 2 count. And then Pentagon starts hitting soccer kicks to the leg of Marco Stunt. And boy, those soccer kicks sound like they hurt like a bitch. And then the Lucha Brothers kind of do this unique spot where Pentagon picks Marco Stunt up in a gorilla press. Eventually turns it into like a one-handed gorilla press. And then he throws Stunt towards Rey Fenix, and Rey Fenix does a super kick. So it's kind of a gorilla press super kick combo. That was pretty unique. But Stunt hits a knee strike, and Jungle Boy gets the hot tag, hits an inverted DDT, and then an inverted power slam which that was certainly unique. Stunt hits a tope suicida. Jungle Boy hits a moonsault knee strike. That was pretty crazy. And then Jungle Boy with a standing shooting star press for a 2 count. But Pentagon hits a Canadian Destroyer. And then Pentagon hits the arm breaker on Marco's stunt. And then the Lucha Brothers hit their Zero Fear finisher, which is the double stomp package pile driver. Phoenix dives to the outside into Jungle Boy. And Pentagon covers stunt for the 3 count and the victory. So your winners, and moving on to the semifinals to face Private Party. Oh man, that's going to be an interesting match. Is the Lucha Brothers. Again, I think they had Jurassic Express, I should say, pegged to go the distance, but with Luchasaurus' injury, they had to basically change things up. And it's like, damn, these injuries are coming at the worst possible time. I mean, before All Out, you had Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega, and they've been, if you've seen the last couple of shows, they've been face to face. They've been, they've been making this feud into a hot one, and it's not one of them, all the other guys that chicken shit heel. No, they're going toe to toe, and it's like, holy shit, this may be one of the best matches that we're going to see at Full Gear. A match that we should have got it All Out until Jon Moxley had his bout with MRSA. And now you have this where Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy were supposed to go up against the Lucha Brothers, and Luchasaurus has a torn quad. That's just the way it goes. I gave this match 3.75 stars out of 5. Moving on to what I thought was certainly the best match of the night, and it certainly showed when you look at this match. Pac and Jon Moxley team up. That's for one. Against Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega. 2 guys from the Elite. But they've hardly ever tagged together, which was interesting. There was a lot of highlights for this match. Omega attacks Moxley from behind. Moxley hits a lariat and then some mounted punches. Moxley, he's basically, the brawler type of character. He's not going to have some of the fancy schmancy moves that some of these other guys have. It's more of a brawler style. Page hits a straight kick. Pac hits an enziguri. Omega hits the Kotaro Crusher on Pac. Pac and Mox carrying a corner Omega, so the two actually, made it look like they were actually working together pretty good. Moxley hits a lariat in the corner and then a kitchen sink. Omega hits a suplex. Page hits the pescado. I was trying to remember what that was. It's actually where they grab the ropes and then just basically dive over the top rope. Page hits a flying lariat on Moxley for a 2 count, and he hits a running boot. Page goes up to the top rope, but Mox pushes Page off, and Page takes a flipping bump onto the apron. Oof. The way he landed just makes you kind of go, ooh. Pac does a spaceman dive. Mox sends Page hard into the turnbuckles. And then Pac hits a low drop kick. And then Pac and Moxley hit a double suplex on Page. And then Pac hits a running drop kick. Moxley with a sliding ground lariat. And then Texas Cloverleaf submission, which Omega broke up. Page hits the discus lariat. Looked really good. And gets the hot tag to Omega. Omega hits the Singapore roll moonsault combo for a 2 count. Omega starts hitting Snapdragon suplexes. Then everybody started diving to the outside. Omega with a tope con hilo to Pac on the outside. Moxley hits a tope suicida, which took out both Omega and Pac. And then Page goes up to the top rope and does a moonsault to the outside, which took out Pac and Moxley. And then Page and Omega does this crazy freaking combo where Omega hits a flying elbow in the corner, I think to Moxley, and he sends Moxley towards Page, who hits a rolling elbow, and then Omega hits the sky high, and then Page hits the running shooting star press, all for a 2 count. That was pretty crazy. Moxley with the boss man slam. Omega hits the V trigger. Pac hits a slingshot cutter. Page with a tope suicide of his own to Pac on the outside. And then Omega and Moxley start going toe-to-toe with each other in the ring. Start trading shots. Omega hits a V trigger. But then Moxley hits a lariat. And then both go to the outside and get their barbed wire weapons. With Omega getting his broom and Moxley pulling out his baseball bat. What was kind of stupid about this spot, though, was the referee rolled out of the ring to check on some of the other guys, and he kind of saw Moxley hit Omega with his weapon. So, again, they did say it was referee's discretion, but, at some point it's like, yeah. And then Pac got back in the ring and threw both of the barbed wire weapons out of the way, although he might have gripped the barbed wire a little too quickly because he actually ended up cutting his hand. But he started shouting to Moxley, saying, I don't want to be disqualified here because, again, wins and losses are going to matter in AEW. And Moxley basically gave him the double bird and then hit the dirty deeds on Pac and basically walked out of the match. And that basically allowed Hangman Page to hit a buckshot lariat. Omega hits a V trigger, and then Page hits the Deadeye Dragon Driver finisher for the 3 count and the victory. This was definitely the best match of the night. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. It was pretty freaking awesome. And immediately after this, Pac is going to be facing Jon Moxley on this coming week, if I can speak for a minute, on this coming week's edition of AEW Dynamite. Consistency, folks, and continuity. It's a big thing right now in AEW, and it's working to a fucking T. And then we get to our main event of the evening. This had a lot of potential, and they just didn't fully utilize it. This was your main event, the AEW World Championship match, the first defense in a Philadelphia street fight. And Chris Jericho even brought out his Painmaker persona, which I think is kind of a play on Okada's Rainmaker persona. The IWGP heavyweight champion right now, for the 5th time, I might add. His persona is the Rainmaker, and his finishing move is the Ripcord Lariat, which he calls the Rainmaker, which Jimmy Havoc has adopted as his own, and he calls it the Acid Rainmaker. But he goes up against Darby Allin in a Philadelphia street fight. This wasn't much of a street fight. They only used like a kendo stick and a chair and some duct tape. That was basically about it. The match itself, on the other hand, was still pretty damn good, though. It's just that the finish really pissed me off. We'll get to that in a minute. But Allin hits a shotgun drop kick to start out with, and a lariat, and then a tope suicida. But Jericho takes control with a back suplex and a northern lariat. If you don't know what a northern lariat is, it's basically a lariat when your opponent is facing away from you. Allin hits a Yoshi tonic for a 2 count. Jericho hits a regular lariat, and then he sends Allin sideways through the turnbuckle, kind of like what happened when Cody was against Allin, where Allin basically turned sideways and went flipping through the turnbuckle. And it's just like, he is fucking crazy doing that. But then they decided to go to a full-length commercial, and this in the main event when they were going, into the side-by-side thing for the rest of the matches, and it's just like, what the fuck, man? You're honestly going to do that for the main event? They come back from commercial. Jericho's using a kendo stick. Allin hits a crucifix for a 2 count, and then Allin hits Jericho with the kendo stick and then does a springboard splash. And then he puts Jericho in a Fujiwara armbar a la MJF, who calls that the Salt of the Earth. Jericho then puts the Walls of Jericho on, but Allin gets the ropes. One of the things that that the fans were kind of confused about was that it was a street fight, but for like pinfalls and submissions, if you got to the ropes, they had to break the hold. even though it was no disqualifications. The difference with street fights and hardcore matches is that with street fights, it's not falls count anywhere, which is why the rope breaks are still allowed. If it was a hardcore match, then the rope breaks wouldn't mean a damn thing. They probably could have explained that a little bit better, but, it is what it is. It really isn't as big a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be. But Allen hits a flying crossbody for a 2 count. Jericho hits the code breaker for a 2 count. Jericho uses a steel chair. Allen hits the shoulder ride stunner for a 2 count. Jericho puts the walls of Jericho back on Darby Allin, but once again Allin gets the ropes. And Jericho then basically hog ties Allin with the duct tape. So basically Allin can't defend himself at this point. Jericho starts doing hip tosses to Allin. Allin actually hits a springboard moonsault for a 2 count, which was surprising. He does a tope con hero. Bear in mind that his arms are bound behind him. So he's doing all of this, basically with no hands. He hits a whisper in the wind for a 2 count. I mean, can you imagine? It's difficult, to climb up to the top turnbuckle when you have both your hands. He was doing it without hands. Jericho hits a lariat, and then he does a tiger bomb onto the frickin' skateboard for a 2 count. The skateboard that Allin rode down on. Ooh, that had to hurt. Allin hits a drop kick. And here's the part that really pissed me off. Because Allin starts going to the top rope, and it's looking like he's going to go for the coffin drop. What they could have done here for the finish of this match, because Jericho was down on the mat, what they could have done is that Allin could have done the coffin drop. He could have jumped off the turnbuckle and tried to do the coffin drop. But Jericho was lying in wait for Allin to do the move. And then he catches him out of midair and does like a pseudo code breaker. That would have been, I think, one hell of a finish to this championship match. Now, granted, it wouldn't have been a true code breaker because Allin is facing the other direction. But still, that would have been one hell of a way to finish this match. I mean, for Jericho to counter Darby Allin's finishing move with basically one of his own, where Darby basically flies through the air trying to do the coffin drop, but Jericho catches him out of midair and does the code breaker for the 3 count and the victory. That would have been one hell of a finish, and honestly would have made Jericho look like a badass. Because it's like he's just lying in wait, like he was scouting. He had scouted Allin before, his moveset and everything, and he knew, the coffin drop would be, one of those moves on the list. And Jericho reference, by the way. But they could have done that where Allin tried to do the move and gets caught out of midair with a code breaker. I think that would have been one hell of a finish to your first ever championship defense. That's not what they went with, though. What they went with instead was this. Allin was climbing up to the top rope, or at least trying to. Jericho starts distracting the referee, which was just fucking weird because there's no disqualifications in a street fight, so what's the purpose of distracting the referee? Well, Jake Hagar runs down to the fucking ring and interferes in the match and punches Darby Allin off of the turnbuckle, which allows Chris Jericho to lock in the walls of Jericho and basically force a verbal tap out for the submission victory. So this was fucking stupid. I mean, this is the second straight fucking main event that Jake Hagar has interfered on Jericho's behalf. This was absolutely fucking stupid. Because, I mean, I've said before, outside interferences in pro wrestling need to go to the way of the dinosaur. It's a relic of the past, and to me, it just ruins the fucking match for me. Because you could have had one hell of a Dynamite finish to this match, like I said. Have Jericho counter Darby's finisher with one of his own, the code breaker. That would have been one hell of a finish to the match. But instead, you have Jake Hagar interfere in this match. And the other thing is, after the match was over, the rest of the inner circle comes down with a little bit of the bubbly, and they started celebrating Jericho's win like he, won the Olympics or some shit, which I thought was fucking stupid too, because it's like, yeah, Jericho won a match where he needed assistance from an MMA fighter against an opponent who couldn't defend himself, who couldn't use his hands. I mean, do they not realize that just makes Jericho look like a complete pathetic pussy now? Because he couldn't beat Darby Allin, a guy half his size, who couldn't defend himself because his arms were bound, and he had to have assistance from fucking Jake Hager. And not to mention the fact that Jericho came out with his Painmaker gimmick. I mean, the Painmaker is supposed to be Jericho's more dangerous side. And they just completely ruined that. That was just a fucking stupid decision to have Hager interfere in yet another fucking main event. Like, seriously? Really? I mean, this match had the potential to be a 4 or even a 4.5 star match if they would have went with the ending that I wanted them to. But Jake Hager interfering in this match, and you could hear it in the crowd too, they were booing loudly. And I don't think it was because of, Hager interfering and it was a heel tactic. I think people just are fucking sick and tired of this kind of shit. And I understand that, the storyline is the inner circle is a bunch of cutthroats. They're going to try to win by hook and crook, but there are other ways to do it. And outside interference is not the way to do it. It just completely ruins the perception of Chris Jericho's character, and it's just a bullshit cop-out way to end a main event. Because it's like, well, Darby would have won if... It's like, we knew Darby wasn't going to win this match, because you're setting up for the big match at Full Gear between Cody and Jericho. So we knew that Darby wasn't going to win. What was important was the story that they told. And the story that they told was Jericho couldn't win without assistance. Is that what you want for your AEW World Champion, especially someone like Jericho? I mean, who's basically a meme creator and is, printing money with the fucking t-shirts, from his catchphrases and all that other shit? Seriously? So frustrating. And it's so frustrating because this was a stacked fucking card for this episode of Dynamite. And there were just parts where they just fucking blew it. So, my final rating for this show, the Philadelphia show, is a 6.5 out of 10. I mean, this show could have gotten a 7 or even higher than that. Definitely would have gotten at least a 7.5 if the main event would have ended like I wanted it to. But, that ending basically took a full star off the match itself, and then a full rating point off the show as a whole. It's extremely disappointing. But it is what it is at this point. It was still a good show overall. I just think it was the weakest of the 3 so far. But when your weakest effort is a 6.5, that's still pretty fucking good. But hopefully, this week's show will be better. Of course, we're going to have the 2 semifinal matches for the tag team title tournament. And it's SCU against the Dark Order on one side. And then I think the big one that everybody's going to be looking at is Private Party against the Lucha Brothers. That's going to be one hell of a match, I think. Because Private Party against the Young Bucks was pretty damn good. But now we're going to see Lucha Brothers against Private Party. So that match is going to be fucking fire. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for this episode of All Elite Review. I apologize for this coming out a couple of days late. But again, shit happens. And I was going to record this yesterday and the fucking power went out. But, it is what it is. But, that'll do it for tonight. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on Wednesday for All Elite Review when we review the Philadelphia edition of AEW Dark, which I guess featured yet another 8-man tag. So that's 3 straight Dark episodes where we've had an 8-man tag. That's going to get kind of old, boys. I mean, I realize you want to try to get a lot of people, involved in the show, give them a payday and all that good stuff, but, at some point you got to cut back on the 8-man tags. But that's going to do it. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. See ya. Well, that is all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to rate, comment, favorite, like, and subscribe to my channels here on YouTube.com and over on BitChute.com. If you would like to sponsor my channel, go to my channel page at subscribestar.com. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan, signing out. Have a good one.